What's happening, Bills Mafia? Ryan Thomas here, live on the Thomas Take Sports podcast. Buffalo Bills post-game show. This is the Buffalo Bills post-game reaction show. The Bills lose this one 41-15 at the hands of the Indianapolis Colts at home. To lose this one at home, obviously, I don't have many positive things to say about this game. Spoiler alert. What are the positives of this game? They're very few and far between. A 41-15 loss is bad. A 41-15 loss is worse at home. And we saw this first half wrap up in today's action. We knew that we would see less fans in the stands. That is something that bothers me. Whenever we have a bad first half and the second half starts and I see fans leaving, it's not, I'm not hating on the fans for leaving. I completely understand, why they would leave, especially after that first half of today's game. But it was a troublesome sign for what was to come, that the fans recognized, hey, this is not the Buffalo Bills team that we know and love. This is a different version, a version that is very terrible, a version that I hope I never see again. But it's a version that we've seen of the Bills 2 out of the last 3 weeks, and it is concerning. It is troubling, and I'm going to dive into everything that went on today at One Bills Drive in Orchard Park, New York, during this 41-15 blowout loss. I expect you guys as well to throw down your comments in the comment section below. Fire those away. I will be reading some comments from those that are in my fantasy football league, the Thomas Take Sports Podcast Dynasty Football League. I asked the guys in my fantasy league, what did they think of today's game? Obviously, the majority of us, if not all of us, are diehard Buffalo Bills fans. I wanted to get their take, read their take on here as well. So before I do that, I am going to give you guys the Ryan Thomas takeaways of the game. I always love to do this segment because there's always 3 key takeaways of a win, 3 key takeaways of a loss. And I have to say, the main story of this game is, of course, the simple fact that Buffalo's offense is regressing. Buffalo's offense is in trouble. I think it's safe to say now. We're not looking at this as just a 1 week, fluke. I'm not. I think if we do that, we'll find ourselves forcing ourselves to be let down with a loss like this today. I told myself after the Jacksonville loss, our offense might be in a little bit of trouble. I didn't want to believe it. I kind of brushed that, behind. And I think, coming off of this one, I think we can easily say that the offense is in serious, serious trouble. I don't care about rain, sleet, snow. I'm not using that as an excuse. I'm talking about as far as the offensive identity of this team and the lack thereof. Heading into this one, I thought coming off of last week, we would see the offense galvanize the troops a little bit in terms of the run game. We'd see a rushing attack early on in the game. We didn't. Matt Breida last year, who was a huge difference maker for us last week, was a huge difference maker for us. I thought we'd see a steady dose of Matt Breida early on in this one. We didn't. It was very frustrating. And it made me wonder, what is Brian Daboll thinking? And I've been very critical of Brian Daboll over the last 4 years. I've been a part of, a lot of shows. I've done a lot of shows, whether it's this show or other shows in the past. And a part of, I guess you could say, like the identity of what I, started was my criticism of Daboll. It goes back to even prior to this season. It goes back to last season. I found, reasons to criticize, and there were valid reasons to criticize the fact that we didn't have a run game, the fact that we were over-relying on the passing game, and the fact that Brian Daboll's play calling actually hinders the Buffalo Bills' strength, which is their defense. A lot of people say, oh, their offense is, the elite of the elite. Their defense is the elite of the elite. Well, their defense is better than their offense. And I think that has been proven, time and time again. I think this is one of those weeks where I think we're going to see one go one way or the other. It's going to go one way in the sense that we have a solid team, or so I thought, and that solid team has now lost 2 out of the last 3 weeks, looking terrible in these 2 out of the last 3 weeks. As well, we're seeing a team that could go one way or the other, meaning how will they respond? Will they respond in a productive, methodical way with consistent, steady results next week or Thursday, I should say? Or will they bounce back in terms of, being the team that we think that they can be, or being a team that they've been in 2 out of the last 3 weeks, which has been just god awful. And it's tough to gear up and get ready for these games only for us to see results like that. It comes off to me as a waste of a Sunday. With their offense regressing the way that it's looked, they have a lack of an identity. I feel like the identity of the offense is completely unknown. Where last year it was Allen, it was Diggs, it was Davis, it was Beasley, and we had a little bit of John Brown. And what makes me throw John Brown out there is the fact that, John Brown was hurt for the majority of the season last year. The Bills ultimately let him go. They bring in Emmanuel Sanders, and you would think that, bringing in Emmanuel Sanders and bringing in some of the pieces that we've brought in over the last couple of years would help this offense be actually better. Emmanuel Sanders being one of the newer pieces, it's actually made the offense worse somehow. And I think that is something that needs to be talked about in terms of, if you want to give Brian Daboll credit, you can give him credit. That's up to you. But how can you give an offensive coordinator credit when he's had a better offense on paper this year compared to last year, and he's actually done worse with it? That's very tough to wrap my head around, why people are able to give him credit when this offense has actually been even worse than it was last year, or maybe even the year before. Yeah, Allen, today especially, there were moments of the game where passes were thrown too hard, especially in the conditions. There were moments in the game where things were rushed too much as far as trying to force things and make things happen. And that just continued, and that created a little bit of a snowball effect in this one. And I think that it's something we've seen in wins that has worked to our advantage, something that we've seen in our losses that obviously works to our disadvantage. That's what makes Josh Allen this live by the sword, die by the sword quarterback. And I go to the next point. The Buffalo defense does have a weakness, and it is the fact that Buffalo's defense wears down to an elite running back. There's been 2 times this year the Buffalo Bills have played an elite running back, Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor. And both of those weeks, Derrick Henry went off, Jonathan Taylor went off today. Jonathan Taylor looked like the second coming of Walter Payton today. Do I think Jonathan Taylor's a good player? Of course, but is he one of the greatest of all time? No. Could he end up being one of the greatest of all time? Maybe, but as of right now, no. And Buffalo's defense just wore down to that running attack of the Colts. Last and certainly not least, that lack of depth is showing. The lack of depth is showing on the offensive line. The lack of depth is showing in the linebacker group. The lack of depth is showing really, I think, on those main 2 sides of the ball with those 2 units. The lack of a line, the lack of a defensive front. And we also know who the best back on the Bills is, and it isn't Singletary or Moss. It's Matt Breida. I hope that Breida gets more touches. I hope that they make it a point to get him the ball more. But those are my takes on the game. Obviously, I want to get to some comments here. Joey Medina says, sup, Brian, big hello from Florida, scratching my head. I truly don't know what happened today. It's really tough for me to sit here and actually talk about this game with how this game panned out. This is probably one of the first times I've done this post-game show, Joey, and I'm saying to myself, I don't know if I can do this show because it was just such a bad, horrible game. I'm obviously worried. I think that there is reason to be worried. Shane Courtney says, it all starts in the trenches. And that is a problem for Buffalo. Obviously, Spencer Brown not being in the lineup, I think that hurt us immensely. And Cody Ford is definitely not up to snuff. So I also want to get to some comments here from the boys in my fantasy league. So This one I want to go up to because I think that this is a good one. Let's go. Kyrie Demos of the Believe Podcast Network. He said, "We look soft today. Plus, Josh absolutely cannot keep reverting back to his 2019 habits. Also missing guys in the trenches. Spencer Brown, Star, Feliciano has been major. Um, basically similar to the Rams was said by F1 McLaurin, which is Shane Courtney again. He says basically similar to the Rams, there are too much finesse and physical teams like the Colts will beat them up. Rams have the same issue with the same teams. Look at what the 49ers did to them." Very interesting take there. The draft needs to be O-line, O-line, and O-line. PF Co-banger Cody White of Slowest Buffalo in the Herd. He says Brian Dable has to go. And Kyrie Demos says 2020 looks like an anomaly at this point. So I'm thinking this Thursday's game is going to really be one that we're on the primetime stage. It's Thanksgiving. We're playing the Saints. And I highly anticipate that we're going to really find out what this team's made of coming off of this loss. If they look like they did today on Thursday night in New Orleans, we're in real trouble. I'm not even going to give a prediction on the game. Frankly, I'm pretty frustrated over the results of the game today. And I think Sean McDermott has some explaining to do as well. And this is the first time I've ever said this on the show, the first time I've ever really given McDermott much criticism. This was probably the first game in quite some time where, if ever, where Sean McDermott was not a great coach. 4th and 5, we kick it. We had moments in the game where we could have really put the offense in a certain position. And I think Sean McDermott's got to take some ownership of Dable's mistakes a little bit, but we'll see what happens. Ryan Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.